Maribel Knox always believed that some nights didn't just pass through your life, they carved it in half, leaving a sharp before and a quiet, aching after. On that particular evening, rain whispered against the windows of her parents' dining room, and the smell of roasted chicken and herbs floated warmly through the air, pretending that everything in the Knox family was exactly as it should be. Maribel sat at the long wooden table, fingers wrapped tightly around her glass of water, watching her younger sister, Celine, laugh easily at something their father, Harold, had just said. Their mother, Vivian, beamed at Celine the way sunlight finds a window, full of pride and softness. "You've always been so independent, Celine," Vivian said, lifting her fork and pointing it gently toward her. "My golden girl, living in the city, building your career, standing on your own 2 feet." Maribel forced a smile, even as her chest tightened. The words echoed in her head, heavy and unfair, because she knew what no one else at the table knew. For 2 years, every month, like clockwork, she had sent Celine $3,500, quietly covering rent, groceries, phone bills, and the kind of lifestyle Celine loved to show off online. The family illusion sat between them like an extra chair no one could see. "And Maribel," Vivian continued, turning her gaze, her tone shifting just enough to sting, "maybe you should take a page from your sister's book and learn how to truly stand on your own." Maribel felt something inside her crack, slow and deep, like ice on a river. Celine reached for the bread basket, her smile still bright, but her eyes flicked toward Maribel for just a moment, a silent plea hidden behind her lashes. Maribel noticed it, the tiny tremor in Celine's hand as she tore a piece of bread in half. The table chatter continued, but Maribel barely heard it. Her mind replayed every late-night bank transfer, every message from Celine that started with, "just until next month," and every promise that things were about to get better. Finally, Maribel set her glass down with a soft clink that somehow cut through the noise. "Actually," she said, her voice steady but low, "there's something we should talk about." Harold looked up, eyebrows raised. "What is it, sweetheart?" Maribel turned to Celine, meeting her eyes directly. "I've been helping Celine financially for the past 2 years," she said. The room went still. Vivian blinked. "Helping how?" Maribel swallowed. "I've been paying her rent, her expenses, everything." Celine's face drained of color. "Mari, please," she whispered. Vivian stood up slightly from her chair, disbelief written across her face. "That's not true," she said. "Celine told us she works at a big firm downtown. She said she was promoted." Maribel shook her head slowly. "I stopped the payments today," she said, her voice firmer now. "I'm not doing it anymore." Celine's chair scraped loudly as she pushed back. "You can't just do that," she snapped, fear and anger mixing in her tone. Harold's voice cut in, sharp and confused. "What on earth is going on?" Maribel felt the night splitting open beneath her feet. Later that night, after the family had gone home in a storm of unanswered questions and slammed doors, Maribel sat alone on her couch, her phone glowing in the dim room. Her heart pounded as she scrolled through her contacts, stopping at a name she hadn't spoken to in years. Lucas Hale, an old friend of Celine's from college. She hesitated, then pressed call. "Hello." Lucas answered, his voice tired but kind. "Lucas, it's Maribel Knox," she said. There was a pause. "Oh. Hi. It's been a while." Maribel took a breath. "I need to ask you something about Celine. I need the truth." Lucas sighed. "I was wondering when this call would come." He explained gently how Celine had been fired from her marketing job months ago, how she bounced between small freelance gigs that barely covered coffee, let alone rent. "She told everyone she was doing great," Lucas said. "But she wasn't." Maribel closed her eyes. "She told people I was controlling her," Lucas added quietly. "Said you held money over her head." The words hit harder than any insult Vivian had ever thrown. "I never did that," Maribel whispered, her voice breaking. "I just wanted to help." Lucas was silent for a moment. "I know," he said. When the call ended, Maribel stared at the ceiling, tears slipping into her hair, realizing how deeply the lies had tangled them all together. The next afternoon, Maribel stood outside Celine's apartment building, a thin folder tucked under her arm. Her hands shook as she buzzed the door. "Who is it?" Celine's voice crackled through the speaker. "It's me," Maribel said. The door clicked open. Inside, Celine's apartment was stylish but hollow, like a stage set. Maribel laid the folder on the table and opened it, spreading out bank statements, screenshots of transfers, and printed photos of Celine's smiling social media posts in fancy restaurants and rooftop parties. "This is what you've been living on," Maribel said quietly. Celine crossed her arms. "You didn't have to do it." Maribel's eyes flashed. "But I did. And you let Mom and Dad believe I was the one failing while you were the success story." Celine's voice cracked. "I was scared," she said. "I didn't want them to see me fall." Maribel softened for just a second, then straightened. "I'll be your sister," she said. "Not your bank." Celine looked away, tears falling freely now. "I don't know how to do this on my own," she admitted. Maribel picked up the folder. "You'll learn," she said gently and walked out, leaving the door to close behind her. 2 days later, the family gathered again, this time in Maribel's living room. The air was thick with tension, like a storm waiting to break. Maribel handed the same folder to Vivian and Harold. They flipped through the pages in silence, their faces shifting from confusion to shock to something like shame. "We never knew," Vivian whispered. She looked at Maribel, eyes wet. "I'm so sorry for comparing you, for making you feel small." Celine stood near the window, arms wrapped around herself. "I lied," she said, her voice barely audible. "I was afraid of disappointing you." Harold cleared his throat. "From now on," he said firmly, "we tell the truth. We stand on our own feet." Maribel nodded. "I'll stand with you," she told Celine, "but I won't carry you." Celine nodded back, a sad smile on her lips. When she left that evening, the house fell into a deep, unfamiliar silence. Maribel sat alone on her couch, listening to the quiet, feeling lighter and heavier all at once. The family story they had all believed in had finally collapsed, and in its place, something real, fragile, and honest began to grow. The days that followed Celine's quiet departure were filled with a strange, uneasy calm, like the air after a storm when the sky looks clear but the ground is still soaked. Maribel found herself waking earlier than usual, staring at the ceiling as pale morning light crept across the walls of her bedroom. Her phone lay untouched on the nightstand, silent where it used to buzz with Celine's messages asking for just a little help or one last favor. Vivian called once, her voice soft and careful. "I keep thinking about everything you've done," she said. "I should have seen it. I should have asked you how you were really doing." Maribel sat on the edge of her bed, listening. "I didn't want you to feel guilty," she replied. "I just wanted peace in the family." Vivian sighed. "Sometimes peace costs too much," she admitted. After the call ended, Maribel went to the kitchen, brewed a cup of coffee, and realized how quiet her own thoughts felt now that she wasn't carrying someone else's secrets. The silence no longer pressed down on her chest. It simply existed, open and honest, like a door left unlocked. A week later, Maribel met Lucas for lunch at a small cafe near the park, a place with chipped wooden tables and the smell of fresh bread in the air. Lucas arrived with a nervous smile. "You look different," he said as he sat down. "Lighter, maybe." Maribel laughed softly. "I feel different," she admitted. Over steaming mugs of tea, they talked about Celine, about college days, about dreams that had once felt so big and certain. "She's staying with a friend for now," Lucas said. "She's looking for steady work." Maribel nodded. "I hope she finds it," she said, and meant it. There was no bitterness in her voice, only a quiet hope. Lucas leaned back in his chair. "You know," he said, "you were always the strong one. You just hit it." Maribel looked out the cafe window at people walking by, each one carrying a story no one else could see. "Maybe," she said, "I'm just learning how to stop hiding it." That evening, Harold came by alone, his coat still on as he stood in the doorway, shifting his weight from one foot to the other. "I wanted to talk," he said. Maribel stepped aside and let him in. They sat at the kitchen table, the same one where she had once sorted through months of bank statements in silence. "Your mother and I did something wrong," Harold said slowly. "We put you and Celine in boxes. The golden one and the one who was supposed to catch up." Maribel looked at her hands. "It felt like I was always running a race I didn't sign up for," she replied. Harold nodded. "I see that now." He reached across the table and squeezed her hand. "You don't have to prove anything to us anymore." The words settled into Maribel's heart, warm and steady, like a promise she hadn't known she needed to hear. Celine called that night. The phone rang twice before Maribel answered. "Hi," Celine said, her voice small but steady. "I got a part-time job at a local shop. It's not much, but it's a start." Maribel smiled. "That's good," she said. There was a pause. "I'm sorry," Celine added. "For lying. For letting them think you were the one who couldn't stand on her own." Maribel closed her eyes. "We both did what we thought we had to do," she replied. "Let's just try to be honest now." Celine let out a breath that sounded like relief. "I'd like that," she said. They talked for a few more minutes, about small things, about the weather, about nothing and everything, and when the call ended, Maribel realized her hands weren't shaking anymore. Weeks passed, and the Knox family began to find a new rhythm, one that felt awkward but real. Sunday dinners returned, quieter and slower, filled with careful words and softer laughter. Vivian asked Maribel about her work, really listened, and Maribel found herself answering without shrinking her accomplishments. Celine came sometimes a little tired, a little humbled, but present. One evening, as they cleared the dishes together, Celine looked at Maribel and said, "I don't know who I am without pretending anymore." Maribel handed her a towel. "Maybe that's the point," she said. "You get to find out." Celine smiled, a genuine one this time, and for the first time in years, it didn't feel like a performance. Maribel started spending more time on herself, signing up for pottery class she had always postponed, taking long walks through the neighborhood in the early mornings when the world felt soft and new. She noticed things she had ignored before, the way sunlight painted patterns on the sidewalk, the sound of birds arguing in the trees, the simple pleasure of breathing without a knot of worry in her stomach. One afternoon, Vivian joined her on a walk. "I used to think strength meant never needing help," Vivian said. "Now I think it means knowing when to stop carrying everyone else." Maribel smiled. "I think so too." They walked in silence for a while, the kind that felt comfortable instead of heavy. Lucas sent Maribel a message one day with a photo of Celine standing behind the counter at the shop, wearing a simple name tag and a tired but proud smile. "She's doing okay," he wrote. Maribel stared at the picture longer than she expected to. She felt a mix of emotions, relief, sadness, and a quiet, steady pride. That night, she texted Celine, "I saw the photo. You look good." Celine replied a few minutes later, "I feel real." Maribel placed the phone down on her chest, letting the words sink in, realizing how much honesty could change the shape of a life. As autumn crept in, the house where Maribel lived seemed to breathe differently. The rooms felt less crowded by invisible expectations. One evening, she sat by the window, watching leaves tumble across the street. She thought about the night at the dinner table, the way everything had cracked open, and how terrifying and necessary that moment had been. Sometimes, she still felt a twinge of guilt, a whisper that told her she should have kept giving, kept fixing. But she answered that whisper now with a quiet truth. Love didn't have to look like sacrifice that left her empty. The family gathered once more, this time not for a confrontation but for a simple meal and shared stories. Harold told a joke that made everyone laugh. Vivian burned the dessert and laughed at herself. Celine talked about a customer who had thanked her for helping them find the perfect gift. Maribel listened, feeling like she was finally sitting at the table as herself, not as a role. When Celine caught her eye and smiled, there was no competition there, no hidden debt, only something like understanding. Later that night, after everyone had gone home, Maribel turned off the lights and stood in the quiet of her living room. The silence no longer felt like something missing. It felt like space. Space to grow, to breathe, to become. She thought about the family story they had all believed for so long, the golden child and the one in the shadows, and how it had finally fallen apart. In its place was something less shiny but far more real, a family learning how to stand side by side instead of on top of each other. Maribel smiled to herself, a soft, peaceful smile, and whispered into the empty room, "This is my life now," feeling, for the first time, truly free. The morning after Maribel whispered her quiet declaration into the empty room, she woke with a strange sense of anticipation, as if something unseen but important waited just beyond the edges of her day. The sky outside her window was pale and open, clouds drifting lazily as sunlight spilled across the floor. She made breakfast slowly, savoring the small rituals she used to rush through when her mind was crowded with Celine's needs and her parents' expectations. While stirring her coffee, her phone buzzed. It was a message from Celine. "I'm meeting with a manager at a marketing firm today," it read. "It's just an interview, but I wanted to tell you." Maribel smiled at the screen. "I'm proud of you for trying," she typed back. The words felt light, unburdened, not tied to any obligation or hidden cost. She realized she could cheer for Celine now without losing herself in the process. That afternoon, Vivian stopped by with a small potted plant, its leaves bright green and full of life. "I thought your place could use something growing," she said, placing it on the windowsill. They sat together, watching the leaves sway gently in the breeze. "I've been thinking about my own mother," Vivian admitted. "She compared my sister and me all the time. I promised myself I'd never do that, and somehow I still did." Maribel listened quietly. "We learn what we see," she said. Vivian nodded. "I'm trying to learn something new now." They shared a soft, understanding smile, the kind that didn't need many words to explain itself. Later that week, Celine invited Maribel to meet her at the park near the river. Celine arrived with nervous energy, her hands twisting together as they walked along the water. "I didn't get the job," she said quickly. Maribel stopped and faced her. "That's okay," she replied. "One interview doesn't define you." Celine exhaled, shoulders relaxing just a little. "But I didn't lie this time," she said. "I told them exactly where I've been, what I've struggled with." Maribel reached out and squeezed her arm. "That's a bigger win than any title," she said. Celine laughed softly, a sound filled with relief instead of pretense. As winter approached, the family's gatherings became smaller and warmer, focused on simple things like shared soup recipes and old photo albums spread across the table. Harold told stories from Maribel and Celine's childhood, pointing out moments neither of them remembered. They laughed at awkward haircuts and crooked smiles. In those moments, Maribel felt the past loosening its grip, its old labels and expectations fading into something softer and more forgiving. The family wasn't perfect, but it was honest, and that honesty felt like a foundation instead of a crack. On the final evening of the year, Maribel stood outside on her small balcony, watching distant fireworks bloom and fade against the night sky. Each burst of light reminded her of the night that had once split her life in two, and how far she had come since then. Celine texted her a simple message, "Thank you for being my sister." Maribel typed back, "Always." As the last firework faded into darkness, Maribel took a deep breath, feeling the cool air fill her lungs, and let it out slowly. The future no longer felt like something she had to carry alone. It felt like something she was finally free to walk into, one honest step at a time. The new year unfolded slowly, like a book Maribel had once been too busy to read. She found herself lingering over simple moments, watching steam rise from her tea in the early mornings, listening to the hum of the city as evening settled in, and answering Celine's messages with warmth instead of worry. One afternoon, Celine sent a photo of a small desk tucked into the corner of her apartment, cluttered with notebooks and colorful pens. "I'm taking an online course in digital branding," Celine wrote. "I want to actually learn this, not just pretend I know it." Maribel stared at the image, her heart swelling in a quiet, steady way. She called Celine instead of texting back. "I'm really proud of you," she said. Celine laughed. "I think I'm finally proud of myself too." The words felt like a bridge forming between them, not built from money or obligation, but from something far stronger: trust. One evening, as Maribel walked home beneath a sky painted with soft pink clouds, she realized that the story she had once believed about herself, the one where she stood in the background, holding everything together while others shined, no longer fit. She unlocked her door and stepped into her quiet apartment, feeling the peace of a life shaped by her own choices. The family myth had fallen away, replaced by something real and imperfect and honest. Celine was finding her footing, their parents were learning to listen, and Maribel was learning, finally, to take up space in her own world. She set her keys down, looked around the room, and smiled, knowing that this ending wasn't really an ending at all. It was the beginning of a story she now had the freedom to write for herself.